think immigrants in our nature, we're very resilient people. We don't go down without a fight. And so for me, when I built TrueFan, I had a idea for a social media engagement platform, basically using the API from Twitter and from Instagram, we could decipher who a brand's top fans would be. The sad thing though is that in 2020, that public access for that API went down, or it became incredibly restricted, or it became very expensive. And so we basically found ourselves in a situation where our entire business model was dependent on a third party company providing us access to data. And so that's not a great situation to be in, because that just means that your fate is intertwined with every decision they make.
Immigrants. For some, at times, it feels like the world wasn't built for people like us. You and I. Like the rules are written before you ever showed up, which they were. Our guest today may have felt that too. He is a true example of when you get punched in the face to dust off and get back up and keep fighting. Swish Goswami is an example of flipping the script from an immigrant kid to raising $10 million plus to partnering with brands like Netflix, EA, and Building Stuff, the platform that rewards you for your data ethically. In this episode, we go deep in what it means to pivot, to invest with purpose, to outline the algorithm, especially in an AI first world. Join the conversation, hit subscribe, help us grow our channel and attract amazing guests, immigrants like Swish. And get ready, this conversation just may change how you tell your story. Swish, welcome to the Immigrant Pod. You are an immigrant plus. This is why I say
I appreciate that. Thank you, Martin. That was a lovely intro. And thank you all for listening, watching. I'm super excited to have made this happen. I know it was a long time coming, and I do genuinely appreciate you guys' flexibility around all the craziness that has been the last few months, but I'm glad we got this down.
this is the story of an immigrant. It's always an up and down battle. You are welcome. We are excited you're here. Having lived in multiple continents, tell me, you have the roots of a Singaporean, Canadian upbringing, and Indian heritage. What is life
Yep.
like behind these three curtains?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't actually think I've been asked that too many times, so it's kind of cool to like be able to reflect on each element. For me, Singapore is a country that I hold very near and dear to me, because it is basically like my home, and it's where I like spent my formative years growing up, all the way from like 0 all the way to like 10, 9 years old, 9, 10 years old. And obviously my father still lives there. I'll go back kind of every 2, 3 years there. And I feel like a lot of my discipline perhaps comes from that country. It's a very disciplined country overall. Like that's essentially what the education system is like as well. Very, not cutthroat, but more like to the T. You have to be super organized or else you're going to get punished. And so I think that was one element that I definitely took away from Singapore. From India, I mean, maybe more my fascination with cricket, with Bollywood movies. I mean, I'm obsessed with Bollywood movies. I've been watching them since I was a kid. I learned a lot of my Hindi actually through watching movies. I can't speak Hindi very well, but I can understand every word now. I don't need subtitles. And that's entirely because of movies. So maybe my creativity comes a little bit from my Indian heritage because of my influence through Bollywood and through cricket. I played cricket as well growing up, even in Calgary in
Mhm.
Canada. And it was a beautiful game to be able to play. And then for Canada, I mean, this is obviously now my home, and this is going to be my home for a very, very long time. I've already like put my roots down in Canada. I don't intend moving anywhere to any other country. I love traveling, but I do love Canada at the end of the day as a home. And hopefully one day, even past business, community service, I want to potentially get in a public office. And it's always been a lifelong dream of mine. And I know we might talk about that later on, but it would be an honor at some point to be able to give back more to this country than what I've already given back.
You're an entrepreneur and you're an investor, as
Hmm.
and you're not shy to also work for other people. And
Yep.
so I was just curious if you want to speak to the idea of being able to step forward and lead a ginormous team, and at the same time to step back and actually be answerable to another CEO or chairman of another organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's very timely because just a few days ago, I obviously announced my role as spearheading growth and marketing at a cool AI startup called Bordy here in Toronto. And the CEO that I'm working with is Andrew D'Souza, who previously built Clearco. And Andrew built that company into a multi-billion-dollar company before stepping down as CEO and building Bordy, because that was his true passion, was this idea that he came up with while he was actually building Clearco. Um, but for me, I think at the end of the day, like, I love doing both. I think the fact is, like, I know I can't come into a role without some level of management responsibilities. So
Yeah.
even at Bordy or before at Parallel, when I was spearheading growth and marketing there, I was given a lot of leeway to hire out my own team, to manage my own team, and to treat my own team almost like it's a startup in of itself, right? It's a startup within a startup. So that's kind of how I see the marketing and growth organization. Um, in terms of, like, do I miss the old days of running my own company all the way with Surf? Of course, there's elements of it that I do miss, but there's also elements, by the way, that I don't miss. I don't miss the sending out investor updates, raising money every 8, 9 months, because that's a very stressful period. Board meetings, dealing with HR issues left, right, and center. I think all of that, I'm a little bit insulated from it when you're an executive at a company, but you're not the founder of it. Um, and so that's like the pros and cons, I guess. But I also am very excited because both with Parallel and now with Bordy, I feel like I'm working with founders that I can learn a lot from. And with every experience, hopefully, eventually, if I do create another company, it'll just make me stronger and better because of the experiences I've had now.
So you're super young, but I want to go back to what I would consider your yesteryears. Talk to us about how you discovered your uh, ability to present yourself in front of people, how you curated yourself in a way that presentation has become not an issue for you.
Yeah, it looks like it's not an issue, but trust me, it's not like God-given talent or anything. If anything, God really didn't help me in that aspect. I was born with a lisp. I was born with an inability to say my S's and R's properly, which from time to time will come out. Um, I was born a little bit shy, I think, as a kid. Like, I wasn't like overly introverted, but I definitely wasn't the type of person to put my hand up in class because, again, I was also potentially embarrassed by how I might sound, and if I can't even pronounce my own name, then that might make my friends laugh or make my classmates laugh. Um, and so I think it was around grade 7 when I went through speech therapy briefly, like for a very short period of time. And I came away from that experience feeling like, this is not right. I feel like I shouldn't have to go and correct this. If anything, maybe I can use it as a blessing in disguise. And so that's basically what I did. I went to debate. I competitively debated from grade 7 to 12. I joined the national team in grade 10, represented Canada at 2 world competitions, and basically had a bit of a chip on my shoulder to prove people that, even if you have a lisp, it doesn't really matter. Even if you maybe aren't, let's say, Barack Obama in terms of eloquence and how he speaks, you don't need to have that always. I think what's important more than how you sound is what you say and the substance behind your content. And so I focused a lot more of my time on that. And then over time, obviously, I also became very comfortable in my own skin. I'm very comfortable with who I am. I'm very authentic because, at least from my perspective, I like to be honest about what I know and what I don't know. So even when I now speak on stages, if a question comes to me that I don't know the answer to, I just bluntly say, I don't know. And obviously, I'll try to give, maybe like my kind of opinion on it, just saying, like, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know much about this, but here's what I think. But at least people kind of resonate with the fact that I'm not trying to portray myself as someone else that I'm not.
That's very interesting. So, as someone who made a pivot from true fan to self, what internal voice or um, immigrant voice really helped you be able to make that transformation, and what really led you to the pivot?
Yeah, I mean, immigrants, I think immigrants in our nature, we're very resilient people. We don't go down without a fight. And so for me, when I built TrueFan, I had a idea for a social media engagement platform. Basically, using the API from Twitter and from Instagram, we could decipher who a brand's top fans would be. The sad thing though is that in 2020, that public access for that API went down, or it became incredibly restricted, or it became very expensive. And so we basically found ourselves in a situation where our entire business model was dependent on a third party company providing us access to data. And so that's not a great situation to be in, because that just means that your fate is intertwined with every decision they make. So we decided to kind of pivot and build out our own product, our own data lake, if you will, called Surf, where we didn't have to rely on another company for data. We could get our own data. And obviously, the way that we wanted to get data was in a more ethical way, in a way where consumers knew what they were sharing, they were able to monitor what they shared, and they were able to get compensated for what they shared. So that felt like a more ethical exchange of data, in my opinion, and that's why we decided to build Surf. But again, it was a pivot. It wasn't a new company. It was the same entity. We just rebranded the company. We kept the same team, and we put our heads down and we're resilient and kept going.
Fantastic. So first forward, let's kind of dig deep a little bit since we're here on data. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in Last night, ChatGPT released their 5.0 version, and so there's a lot of immigrant professionals out there that are leading the way in how AI is changing the world, but there's also a ton of us who are behind the curtains, not really understanding what's going on, how to maximize the potential of having a PhD level tool in your hands. When you're speaking to crowds or you're speaking to your teammates, how are you guys integrating AI um, into what our future is going to look like and in business?
When it comes to speaking, I do talk a little bit about AI. I don't talk about it as much. I obviously am going to start talking about it a lot more now that I'm at
Hmm.
Bordy, because obviously the whole business behind Bordy is built on an AI, and we're trying to make our AI the most popular in the networking space. Um, but yeah, previously I think I've told people just continue to monitor it, because initially when ChatGPT came out, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Maybe it can be used as a great research tool. I think what I even didn't anticipate is how quickly the models would evolve and how quickly applications would be built on them that were actually quite useful and
Hmm.
valuable. Um, Specifically, the thing that intrigues me the most are like the no code editing platforms. So, like the platforms like Cursor or Replit or Lovable. These are incredible platforms that I've already used and built apps on my own. Just like games that I wanted to play, apps that I think are useful for me to monitor my calendar, or to be able to create a sales CRM that's in a far better way than I think HubSpot could even build.
Yeah.
And so it is pretty incredible what you can do. And obviously now with ChatGPT, sorry, not ChatGPT, with OpenAI releasing GPT-5, the models not only have become smarter and faster, but they've also become tremendously better. Like even within ChatGPT now, you can do a lot of the things you would do on a Lovable or Replit just within ChatGPT. So that whole idea, that example of building a sales CRM, you can do that now on ChatGPT in a pretty quick amount of time, and it's pretty damn good. So I would just say my advice is like monitor these platforms, get really good at using them, because most of the world still hasn't woken up to this. They haven't woken up to the fact that the people we're going to hire are the people who are going to need to learn how to use these platforms and be an expert in it, right? They need to know what prompts to put in, how to really get the most out of these platforms, because these platforms are intuitive, but if you really want to master them, there is a bit of a skill gap and there's a lot to learn there.
Very interesting. So let's talk to the 8-year-old you, 8-year-old immigrant.
Mhm.
Uh, s- what question would he ask you? Something no one does, and what would your answers be?
The eight year old,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he didn't know what he was doing. I feel like he was like, Mom, Dad, why are we leaving Singapore, a tropical paradise, to go to Canada, which is so
Yeah.
cold? But I don't know. I think what one question I probably would ask myself is, why stress? I feel like when I was younger, especially in my childhood, especially going to a new school, I went to a few new schools actually in Canada when I moved here. I didn't go to like a new school right away and then just settle in. I think I went to like three different schools before I really found the one that I was like, okay, this is a school I want to be a part of. But I was a very like this high stress kid. I was like very ambitious at a very young age. I was constantly thinking about my future. I was constantly thinking about what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to do stuff that 18, 19, 20 year olds were doing at like 12, right? And I wanted to like get in kind of an acceleration on my career right away. Maybe that's also, by the way, why I dropped out of college, because I just couldn't take the standard path anymore, and I kind of wanted to go in like a non-linear path. But I I think just don't stress at that age. Like I look back also, and I think there's so many cool things about your childhood that you're able to do that maybe when you grow older, you're not able to do as much
Yeah.
of. And also like viewing problems as a kid. I mean, that's something I still try to do, is like have that innate curiosity. Kids encounter a problem and they don't think, oh my God, the world's ending. Kids encounter a problem and they're like, well, this is interesting. What is this? I haven't encountered this before. What is it? I want to learn everything about it. I want to learn everything about it. I want to learn everything about it. So that kind of childlike curiosity is something that I feel like is important for people to take away too.
So you obviously have a lot going on in your life. I was just curious. You're on TEDx. You have LinkedIn, and you're in boardrooms. How do you balance owning your public persona with preserving your core identity behind closed doors?
I think the two need to be separate. People who know me from social media only might think of me in a particular way. They might be like, oh, this person is like a workaholic, or this person just never stops talking about work. Or hopefully, they think that, oh, this guy's up to some really, really cool things. He must be living such a glamorous life. And even that, by the way, is very false. For me, I'm in the office every day. Like a lot of my life is not very glamorous. Yeah, I get to travel to some places. I get to meet cool people at times, but most of the time in the week, it's heads down, working with the team, getting through calls, putting together decks, presenting things. Social media.
What's the drive behind the changes you are observing in your life currently? I mean, you've made a decision to move to your own place in the last 6 months. You're starting to create a plan to be more on social media. Why these changes and why now?
I think it's because as you get older, hopefully, like you're reinventing yourself, and you're reinventing yourself, in my opinion, for what you believe like success comes down to. Which, at the end of the day, the word success, in my opinion, should be synonymous with happiness. If you're not trying to chase happiness all the time, you're probably doing something weird. Because at the end of the day, like life is about just maximum happiness, and hopefully, you're optimizing most things in your life for that. So that's really what I'm trying to do, right? Is I work out every day, because afterwards that feeling is like irreplaceable. Like after you come back from the gym, that feeling of like I did something good for my body is unbelievable. It's like it's a rush that I want to feel every day. I love being in the office with the team versus being hybrid or being fully remote. And that's a conscious effort, because I want to meet these people. I want to get to know them. I want to be their friends. I want to be more active on social media, because I think what we're building is super exciting. I want more people to hear about it. So I think everything kind of indexes towards success, but for me, it indexes towards what genuinely will bring me the most happiness. At the same time, I've also cut out a lot of things. Like I've cut out going out a lot. I don't go out a lot. Maybe like once or twice a month if there's a special occasion, or if I'm traveling, I'll go out. But otherwise, I'm mainly like working out or playing tennis or doing the sauna cold plunge or at the office. And you'll basically find me in like one of those four scenarios every single day. Like you will guaranteed find a few of those factors in every single day of my life. That is a guarantee.
Okay, so let's double down on your everyday life, right?
Mhm.
Obviously you have way too much going on. How are you? And I'm not looking for a life work balance, because I think that's crazy. I mean, I know a lot of people believe in the idea, but I it's not practical for me. But how do you balance or plan your calendar out to be effective?
I think on the outside looking in, people might think I have a lot going on, but honestly, it's not as much internally. Like when I look at my life right now, the three things that are the most important to me are 40, like my like full time
Mhm.
job, and that makes up now like 99% of my week. Just like by the way before Parallel did. Secondly, is working out. That's like non-negotiable that I have to do it every single day. By the way, it doesn't mean that I'm weightlifting every day. I might go and play tennis, or I might go and run, or I might go bike. Right, so there's a mix of cardio and weightlifting as well. And then finally, there's setting up my place. I moved in, but I'm obsessed for some reason with just continuing to set it up, continuing to make it my own space. Things I liked 4 months ago, I might not like anymore. I might want to take that piece of art down. I might want to add a new floating shelf. I might want to add a new TV or a new, whatever, like decoration in my room. So I'm constantly optimizing my home because, yeah, I don't spend as much time maybe in my home as the office. Maybe it's like split half and half. But like the most important thing for me is like when I get home, I want to recover and I want to sleep well. And those two things need to be optimized well for, or else I'm not going to be able to do as much as I do the next day. Everything else, by the way, speaking, investing, all the board kind of obligations that I have with the League of Innovators, like Covenant House, all of that, like track limits, my podcast, all of that, I would honestly say is like 1% of my week.
So you touched on something really important, and that's the power of delegating. Can you touch on why delegating is necessary to be able to become successful in helping many as many people as possible? And while you're doing that, how do you choose your leaders?
It's a great question. I am particularly good at this now. I think I wasn't maybe when I was building out Surf initially, but obviously now, like having gone through that experience, having gone through the experience of Parallel and now at 40, I feel like I'm good not only at identifying good people, but then making them into leaders and delegating and kind of giving them responsibilities. The whole mantra that I like to lead on is like let A players be A players. If you're going to hire a superstar, don't like confine them, right? Let them loose, but give them guidance. Tell them, here's the North Star, here's the vision, here's what we're trying to do. Make sure you align on that goal together, but then let the actual strategy of how you get there totally be up to them. Like trust them to go into the deep end and to figure it out. And so that's what I do even with my team. Like I have at Bordy, for example, like the marketing and growth main pillars are like social content, email, paid ads, events, and influencer marketing. 5 core pillars. I am not responsible for all 5 of those pillars. I'm responsible for events. I have Clark, who's responsible for email. I have Chris, who's responsible for social content. I have Muge, who's responsible for paid ads. And I have Jacob, who's responsible for influencer marketing. So I have each person responsible for a core pillar, and I let them figure out the strategy. But here's the thing, I'm going to talk to each one of them to align on what the North Star goal is, not only for the year, but for the next 3 months. What are we trying to do? And then I'm following up with them with each week to make sure that they're tracking well against that goal. But the actual strategy of how to get there, I'll advise on it. But at the end of the day, it's entirely up to them to make it happen. That's why I hired them, because I believe they are the best at what they do within that pillar.
Very interesting. So, with tools like ChatGPT 5 now in the wild, and tools like Grok pushing AGI, what tangible skills or mindsets should immigrants professionals cultivate to make AI their ally, not competitor?
Just use it as an assistant to start off with, right? Just use it as an assistant. I think ChatGPT is great. I use it all the time for research. I really honestly go more to ChatGPT now than Google search, because I think it's great that ChatGPT can consolidate so much, can advise you on, hey, I can do this, I can do that afterwards as well. Um, and so, yeah, I think number one is use it as an assistant, and then use other platforms and see and just play around with them, right? Like tinker around with Replit, tinker around with Lovable, tinker around with Claude, tinker around with Cursor. See if you can produce anything meaningful out of it. Even if it's just spending one day watching a YouTube video and then diving in, buying the free account and going right in, I think that's worth it. And then finally, again, this is a bit of a plug, but check out Bordy, right? Like what we built is pretty great. You just literally call Bordy and he'll set up a cool introduction for you. And the great thing about Bordy now is like as our network is growing and we're bringing on really, really cool people, we're actively connecting people who are eventually doing business together. Whether they're, a sales lead that becomes a customer, or whether it's a potential investor that's meeting a business that ends up investing, or whether it's a publisher that ends up working with you to go and write a book. So you never know the opportunities you'll get through networking. I think everyone can agree to that. We're just trying to optimize the networking piece, making it a little bit more better and seamless for everyone.
Immigrants, if you're just jumping into the pod, we're speaking with Swish Goswami. Swish, tell our listeners where they can find you on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at Go Swish on Instagram and at Swish Goswami, my first and last name on LinkedIn. I'm very approachable on both, so feel free to message me if you listen to this.
Excellent, excellent. Let's talk to immigrants who are ambitious. You invest in startups like Phase and Clan and Othership that
Yep.
shape certain narratives. What's the story or identity thread you look for in business, not just profitability?
I mean, obviously, founder is the most important for me because I am investing pretty early on. Like, I'm not getting involved at a later stage. Typically, I'm getting involved in like a pre-seed or seed round where the companies now might look like they have it all figured out, but when I met them, they probably didn't have it all figured out, and they were probably still piecing the puzzle together. And so, what you need to ask yourself is, who's the person piecing the puzzle together? Do you believe them? Do you like them? Do you think they're going to do it? Do you think they're resilient? So, for me, that's number one. And then, yeah, number two, I do my research into the market. I understand whether or not the market tailwinds are there. Like, is the world moving towards the vision that the founder is portraying? There are, by the way, some cases where you kind of have to go and say yes if the founder is brilliant and if you can just clearly see the spark in their eye, like they're going to push the world in that direction no matter what. But sometimes the world is also going to, be on your side. So one of the tailwinds, for example, for Othership, which is a sauna and cold plunge space in Toronto now and New York, is Gen Z is not drinking as much as previous generations. Gen Z now are part of run clubs. They're doing the sauna and they're doing the cold plunges and they're working out more. So I think Gen Z is likely going to be the healthiest generation of all time, especially after we reach the age of 35. And it's very cool then to think, okay, if they're going to have the most purchasing power in 5 to 10 to 15 years out of any other generation, are they going to be putting their money towards a club and bottle service, or are they going to be putting their money towards an incredible sauna cold plunge experience where they can still meet people but do it in the confines of health?
Very interesting how you've approached your investment portfolio. Many immigrants inherit skepticism towards markets. What's one mindset shift you would advocate for immigrants, especially when they're thinking about investing either in the general market or in closed circuit markets like features? How would you guide them in how they make their decisions toward investing for the future?
Well, I think from my perspective, and again, I'm going to give you a bit of a grain of salt here. I'm not, by the way, giving financial advice, and I'm not a broker. I'm not, someone who studied finance. But again, if you're looking to invest in startups, just know it's very risky. You really should get to know the founder incredibly well because at the end of the day, if you can trust the founder, you should be able to make an investment, hopefully, in a much better way because you have conviction that you can trust that person who's running the ship. If it's really looking at stocks, for me, I don't do mutual funds. I think mutual funds are not great because of the commission that they take, and I feel like you're far better off investing the money yourself. If you are terrified of putting money into individual stocks, totally don't blame you. By the way, that's a bit of me as well. Just put your money into ETFs. I think ETFs are great. The ones that I'm most excited about are all the Vanguard ETFs, typically like VFV, VQT. These are some pretty exciting opportunities. And if you look at the S&P 500, typically over the last 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, 25 years, it's typically just on this, right? Yeah, you have the ebbs and flows on a micro level, but on the macro, it's definitely been, very much towards the right and up. So believe in the S&P 500, believe in the U.S. economy. I think that's generally the principle that I live by, and it's done fairly well for me so far.
As someone with over 200 million views on LinkedIn, what's the most honest reaction or private message you've never acknowledged publicly?
Oof, great question. Um, I mean, there's two. I think one's positive, one's negative. So the positive, I think there was an individual a few years ago who basically messaged me and basically told me that she was kind of like going through like massive amounts of depression and kind of was contemplating suicide at some points, and she was not really going through a great time. And she messaged and just said that, like, seeing some of the content that I put out a few years ago, especially like how young I was perhaps, and the fact that I was an immigrant, and the fact that I was, I went through my own adversities and kind of my personal life as well, and I've been pretty open about talking about all of that, like mental health and everything. She resonated with it, and so obviously I don't think I was the only reason why she turned her life around, but she's actually someone I still to this very day stay in touch with from time to time. And every 2 3 months I hear from her, and she's doing fairly well. Definitely much better than how she was doing a few years ago. On the negative side, I mean, Oh man, I've gotten people in the past. I don't know what it is. Maybe I rubbed them off the wrong way. Maybe they're jealous, or maybe they honestly maybe they just are trying to blame me for their insecurities. But I've had people from time to time call me a fraud. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't done anything. Why do you act like you've done everything? Blah 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 blah. So I think a lot of people who put themselves out there could probably resonate with that. I think if you're trying to put yourself out there and trying to do good for the world, you're always going to have people that try to claw you back down. And for me, I don't publicly acknowledge hate. I don't publicly acknowledge negative comments. Thankfully, it doesn't happen as much anymore, but definitely back in the day, especially in my early 20s when I was posting a lot more actively, as almost in like 2021, 22, like around the student kind of college years,
Mm.
I definitely had my fair share of negative comments being sent my way.
Your book, The Young Entrepreneur, distills hard lessons.
Yep.
What's the personal anecdotes you left out of the book? Something too long.
Ooh. I mean, I don't think we took. I mean, I'm being very honest about this. Like that book covers essentially 20 to 26-year-old Swish. So it covers starting surf, pivoting, raising money, building the surf product. It does not cover the exit. So I probably should go back and rewrite that chapter to talk about the surf exit. But um, it does cover quite a bit. And so I am proud that that book is quite honest to what actually happened in my life and the lessons that I learned from it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, one thing perhaps it doesn't talk about is the fact that, like, I maybe as a person being an author, you always see someone and you're like, oh, they have their life put together. I certainly did not have my life put together. I think, especially when it came to like health, I was neglecting my health a lot during the time that I was covering that
Yeah.
book. Um, I wasn't sleeping right. I wasn't working out for sure. I wasn't perhaps eating correctly or eating enough, um, drinking a decent amount, and going out a lot because I was constantly justifying it as like, oh, I'm going out to see investors. I'm going out to see customers. I'm going out to be with team members. Oh, I'm doing this for my work. I'm doing this for my work. And then it becomes a bit of a problem. So I think the health side perhaps is something that I didn't fully convey in the book. I do talk about mental and physical health, and I do talk about balancing it. But when I reread it, thinking about who I was when I wrote it, I almost feel like it was ironic that I talked a lot about it because that's definitely not how I lived. I think it was how I was aspiring to live, which is how I live now.
Mhm.
But I definitely wasn't living up to that.
So you obviously have put a lot of effort in being health conscious, and you're not just doing it in terms of benefiting yourself, but also in the way you're investing your time and benefiting others through enterprises like Brody. How do
Yep.
you craft that into what the future is going to look like, especially for Gen Zs, given the projections the world is looking at?
Well, I think it's exciting. There's just so much opportunity. It's never been an easier time to build a business. There's never been an easier time, in my opinion, to get to a prototype or an MVP of your product if you had an application or software idea. And that probably means that it probably was not never easier to also raise money. Like, albeit the markets aren't perhaps in the best situation. Maybe they were a little bit better before, but the fact that now you can literally go from like I have an idea to oh my god, I have a visualization of the idea actually working, and you could build all of that without any coding
Yeah.
experience, like unbelievable. So I'm excited for our generation to capitalize on all of this. I'm hoping more entrepreneurs and creators are built. I hope more people listen to their heart and not, the voices of random people on the internet. And I genuinely hope that over time we also are a little bit more sensitive to social issues. I see in the world a lot of things that disturb me. I think the neglect of climate change is a huge mistake. I think, you know, this kind of anti-immigration sentiment that's popped up in many countries, especially in the West, is troubling. And I also see refugee crises all around the world that are continued to be unresolved. And yeah, we have international attention, but the problem with social media is you have attention for 2 weeks and then we move on to the next thing, and the world just seems to forget that the issue still persists. So those are the things that trouble me, and hopefully, as a generation, we can be a bit more sensitive to fixing those and putting our money where our mouth is.
Switch, let's throw a curveball out to immigrants across the globe, really. There's 50 million immigrants across the globe. We're seeing the world change really rapidly. Um,
Mhm.
I believe the problems of the world are best solved by entrepreneurs and not governments or institutions. So, looking at some of the hotspots in the world, how would you approach them as an immigrant entrepreneur in terms of solving conflict, hunger, disease, on and on?
For me, I'm a little bit biased, because I think I've done a little bit to put my money where my mouth is. Like I've donated to charities that I believe in, that I know where the output of the money I put in goes because I'm very involved in those charities, or I know people who are involved in those charities. Um, I think donating is obviously great. I think getting involved, if you can, in charity work is unbelievable. Like, be on the board for a charity, be on a council for a charity, be on a committee for a charity. Just get involved. Don't even just donate. Donating is great, by the way, but get involved if you can. If you have a bit of time in the month, 2, 3 hours a month, that's typically huge for these sort of committees. And if you can bring a unique skill, like obviously my network is something I pride myself on, the people that I know, if I can go and lend that to a charity to benefit them with fundraising or event promotion or corporate sponsorships and corporate partnerships, that I think is great. I think number two, for me, everything boils down to climate. For me, I've done a ton of research into it. Um, Candidly, if I was to start a company tomorrow, a lot of people might think that it would be within AI. It would probably be within climate tech, because I just think eventually we're going to wake up, sadly, to the idea that we screwed our planet over. And when we wake up to that realization overall, like as a population, it'll just be too late. Um, Disease, hunger, conflict typically happens, and I think you can attribute a lot of it to climate. I think a lot of it can be attributed to climate and the existential threat of climate change. It's not that the world, by the way, just rapidly ends. It's the fact that the world is going to have places where you cannot grow crops and food anymore that we were previously reliant on. Agricultural collapse is the inevitable threat of climate change. And I think if we wake up to that realization sooner rather than later, it'll help. Um, when it comes to conflicts, otherwise, though, I feel a lot of them are so multifaceted. A lot of them are you have to look at religion, you have to look at how populations grew in separation from one another, and sometimes also, by the way, in unison of one another. And you also, by the way, have to understand that in today's world of like propaganda and candidly fake news on social media, there's so many narratives being spun up that to really know what the truth is has become much tougher than ever before.
You've built a career based on your experience on marketing. For an entrepreneur that is looking to get into business today, how should they approach marketing?
I think about marketing in a few ways. Number one is always work backwards from your target customer, always. So think about who it is you're selling to, who is the ideal customer, break that person down ideally, like role, age, location, and then figure out where they live on the internet, right? What are they looking at? What publications are they reading? What videos are they watching? What influencers do they follow? And work backwards and build your strategy like that. I'll just pretty much go back to Bordy and tell you that's exactly what we did the last week when I was prepping for this role. I looked at who we were trying to sell to, who we were trying to bring on, who the ideal customer for Bordy would be, and I worked backwards. I said, okay, where do these people live? Oh, they're at there's founders communities. There are a bunch of founder-led events. Okay, that should be a pillar of our marketing strategy. Oh, LinkedIn, a ton of founders live on LinkedIn. That should be a part of our strategy with LinkedIn influencers. Paid ads, LinkedIn, that makes sense. X, that makes sense. Meta, that makes sense. You work backwards from where people who you want to bring on live on the internet, and you build your strategy based on that.
So we've seen a lot going on in the marketplace, and we've seen you touched earlier about the amount of noise that we're hearing on social media and even in major news channels, especially targeted toward immigrants.
Yep.
If you could redesign immigration or business
Mm.
ecosystems for immigrant founders, from funding to storytelling, what ecosystems or changes would you propose to level up the field?
Yeah, I'd love an entrepreneur visa. I think an entrepreneur visa would be great. I think we had one actually at one point, at least in Canada, and then obviously the whole point system got overhauled and now it's getting put back in and everything. But I think if you built a business in your home country and you want to move to Canada, at least, you should be able to get a much better bump in points because you've proven that you have an entrepreneurial mindset. And again, in this country, we need more entrepreneurs. We need more entrepreneurs, by the way, to stay in Canada. I really want to encourage entrepreneurship a bit more. And I think the way you do that is tax incentives or potential grants that are given, more money being put towards immigrants who are entrepreneurs. It'd be cool, wouldn't it, if a government, like let's say the government of Canada, and you're Canadian and you immigrated to the UK. How cool would it be if the government of Canada gave a tax break or gave a cash grant to immigrant entrepreneurs from Canada, saying, hey, we know you're in the UK. We know you're providing value by building a business. We'd love to give you some money back. Just know that we value you as a Canadian, right? And hopefully down the road, you'll come back and you'll set up your base here again. We know you're in the UK right now, but we hope you'll come back, and we appreciate you as a country because of the valuable contribution that you're making as an entrepreneur.
You've become very effective at managing resources. So, for you, what's the most human lesson about teamwork or precision you've learned from the sports world, and how does that
Yep.
mirror immigrants, entrepreneurs?
Well, I mean, yeah, teamwork is literally like everything I've learned from it has come from sports, like you mentioned. It's come from watching sports, it's come from following people who I admire in sports, and it's come from playing sports. I think teamwork comes down to the idea that there's no one person, hopefully, that's greater than anyone else. The sum of the parts, though, is greater than all the individual parts. And what that also means is that you need to work as a well-oiled machine. So you need to be willing to compromise, you need to be willing to put your ideas out and sometimes not have them work. And you need to be willing to motivate people around you as well. Even for me this week, like one of the things I wanted to do at Bordy was just bring the energy. Like I feel like when you come in with a positive attitude and you come in, hey, giving a high five or giving a pound to each person in the team in the morning, I don't know, just small things like that just set you apart because they show to people that you're like, yeah, I'm part of the team. I'm not siloed away in a corner working on my own, not telling anyone what I'm doing or not asking for help. So for me, that's what I like about teamwork is once you really get the engine going and once you all start to feel the momentum of teamwork, it's unbelievable. It's a magical feeling.
Obviously, you're deeply creative across platforms, books, podcasts, investing, speaking. What creative urge keeps you pulling forward that you've never spoken about in public?
Oh, music. I am obsessed with music. I'm terrible at playing any instrument. I'm really good somehow though at software instruments. So like not actually playing the guitar, but then using my keyboard to play the guitar, or playing the piano on my keyboard. I've actually dabbled a bit into it, and maybe there's something I'll share in the coming months. But I've been working with a producer. I've been working with a visual artist, both whom I really respect, to kind of put together something in the melodic techno space. That's my favorite genre. So that's a creative outlet, and I love music, and hopefully I can share something soon. But nothing that I've been public about yet.
So cool, so cool. Immigrants, we're speaking with Swish Goswami. Swish, tell us where we can get you on social media.
Yeah, go Swish on Instagram and Swish Goswami on LinkedIn, and definitely approachable on both.
You've built multiple businesses from ground and turned around and sold a business. What's the experience of selling a business, and tell us about the importance of an exit or multiple exits?
I think it's important to always have a conclusion to a project. So the conclusion, by the way, can happen at any stage. Some people build a business for 5 years and sell it. Some people build a business for 90 years, die, and they end up passing it on to their grandchildren, and that's a conclusion for them. So for me, I wanted to make sure that every year I was as motivated and excited to build Surf as the year before, if not more. And I felt it was going the opposite way. I felt both my co-founder and I started to realize we were kind of hitting a ceiling, maybe not even in terms of revenue and our growth, but in terms of our energy and how much we wanted to put towards Surf. And so that's when we made that decision to go and sell Surf. And we went out, hired a broker, and then we realized, wait, why are we hiring a broker? The best part about Surf is us. It's not the product even, it's not the customers, it's the people. So we should be talking to buyers directly. We shouldn't be going through a bank to do that. We should be talking to buyers and reaching out and doing the first call with them on our own. So that's what we ended up doing, and it worked. And the process was a little bit bittersweet because obviously you're passing on a product and you're passing on customers that you care a lot about, that you've spent kind of like thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours building and working on and optimizing and fixing. So it is a bit bittersweet to say bye to it, but at the same time, it's also nice now that you can open up a new chapter. And you should, by the way, feel very ready to do that. You know, if you're kind of half-assing it, if you're like, you know, on the fence about selling, then don't sell.
Immigrants pursue many ventures in life. For those who decided to go after business, and if you were to talk to my team, really, that is, I'm sure in the back end listening, if you could whisper one hard-earned piece of wisdom directly to them, to the listeners who are listening to this show, to boost the reach of this episode and to boost the reach of what they do on a daily basis, what would you say in your whisper?
Don't sweat the small things and don't eat the marshmallow. So yeah, don't sweat the small things. That makes sense. Don't eat the marshmallow is what my brother always tells me,
Yeah.
which is don't succumb to distraction. Go after what you want and be focused.
You hang around certain circles of influencers, if I may put it that way. When
Mhm.
you meet immigrant founders, what is that experience like? And usually, really, what's the honest question you want an answer from each?
Yeah, I do. By the way, also have to run. Sorry, I just have another call right after. But the core thing that I look for when I speak to immigrant founders, I love their stories. I genuinely love hearing the immigrant story. Like why did you move to where you moved? What did it teach you? What were the hardships that you had to go through when you moved? And how did that make you a better person? Or what did you learn from them? Because you'll realize that again, immigrants are very resilient, and because they're very resilient, they actually make for really good entrepreneurs. Because again, they get punched 4 or 5 times, and they say, "All right, what's next? Let's keep going." And they're just so used to, sadly, you know, for some people, not having life work out for them, and then they end up bouncing back, and they end up continuing to live with their head held high. And so I think that's a very beautiful thing, and not many people can kind of share that perspective. But thankfully, most immigrants, should be able to share the perspective of feeling uncomfortable, not knowing what to do at times, but still just continuing to put their head high and carrying on.
Wow, fantastic. Swish, we're getting to the top of the hour. We appreciate you coming to the Immigrants Pod. What's your final word to immigrants?
Oh, just thank you so much for having me. I'm very proud to be an immigrant. Very, very, very proud to be an immigrant. It's something I would never trade my life in for. It's defined who I am, and I hope you all who are listening also reflect on your immigrant story and perhaps how it's shaped you to be who you are and what sort of superpowers it's given you. Because being an immigrant has honestly, it's given me a ton of superpowers and blessings that I can be grateful for.
Swish, before you go, what's your future goal?
Ooh, I want to run for office. I want to be the prime minister of Canada one day. I've said it before, you know, and I think eventually I'll be wise enough, hopefully, and mature enough to go and do that. But for now, I'm going to continue to put my heads down and provide value on the private level. Continue to do my community service. Continue to speak about issues I care about. Be as positive and happy as I can, and eventually, I hope things will figure itself out.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is my responsibility. It is the responsibility of our team to make sure we support you in your endeavors now and in the future. We are here to champion for you and to support you in any way we can. Immigrants across the globe, Swish Goswami, this is a wrap. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Medical Group of Companies, providing compassionate non-emergency medical transportation across the states of Texas and Florida. Learn more at www.medicaltrans.com. Switch, tell our listeners one more time where they can find your social media.
Yep. Go Swish on Instagram and LinkedIn, Swish Goswami. Feel free to reach out if you enjoyed this episode. And I'm very approachable, so I'll definitely say hi back.
Absolutely. Thank you. If today's conversation moved you, follow us and join our movement on social media, TikTok and Instagram at Immigrant Nation, Facebook at Immigrant Nation Podcast, LinkedIn and YouTube, the Immigrant Nation Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. This is the Immigrant Nation Pod, where stories move nations. Swish, it's a wrap, brother. Thank you so much for making the time.